There's a strange stillness in staying home, a kind of silence that hums just beneath the noise of ordinary life. At first it feels like confinement. The walls too close, the air too quiet, the mind restless. Yet, somewhere within that stillness, something begins to move, something ancient, something you've been running from, perhaps without even knowing it. And that movement, that quiet stirring beneath the surface, is where your real life begins. Because staying home isn't merely about where your body rests, it's about returning to the home you left behind inside yourself, the home of your own depths. It begins with a discomfort. You feel it first as boredom, maybe even anxiety, the impulse to reach for distraction, to scroll, to talk, to plan, anything to escape that invisible pull inward. Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." You can feel that truth vibrating in the emptiness of your room. The moment you stop moving, you begin to sense what's been waiting for you all along the faint echo of your unspoken life. The walls are not your prison. They are mirrors, each reflection a face you've worn for others. The charming mask, the capable one, the achiever, the helper. You begin to see them flicker and dissolve under the soft pressure of solitude. Without an audience, who are you performing for? Without the noise of the world, whose voice do you hear? The persona, Jung called it, the social self you built to survive among others. Necessary, yes, but not the whole story. When the world slows, the persona slips. What remains is raw, uncertain, real. You might not like what you find at first. The shadows gather the old fears, the repressed desires, the griefs you never had time to grieve. They emerge like ghosts at the edges of your awareness, whispering your forgotten truths. The shadow is not your enemy. It's the part of you that holds what you've exiled. Your anger, your envy, your tenderness, your wildness. Staying home, in this sense, means staying with yourself long enough to see what you've hidden. At first, it hurts. The confrontation feels like falling backward into dark water. You struggle, searching for light, for air, for escape. But if you stop fighting, if you allow yourself to sink, something extraordinary happens. The darkness begins to breathe with you. The water no longer suffocates, it holds. You begin to see faint shapes, moving beneath the surface, images from dreams, fragments of memory, forgotten sensations. This is the unconscious world Jung spoke of. Not a dungeon, but a vast inner cosmos, teeming with symbols and meaning. You realize, with a quiet shock, that you are larger than you imagined. The boundaries of yourself dissolve, and you sense that everything you feared, everything you've avoided, is not separate from you at all. It's you, the lover and the lonely, the saint and the liar, the child and the cynic. The unconscious doesn't judge. It holds opposites in balance, and for the first time you feel the possibility of wholeness. You start to understand why solitude was always sacred, why mystics withdrew from the world not to escape it, but to rediscover it from within. Staying home is an initiation, a descent into your own underworld. And like all true descents, it demands that something die so that something more alive can be born. As you sit in the quiet, the noise of your old identity fades. You begin to notice smaller things, the hum of your own breath, the play of light across the wall, the pulse of your heart as it slows. The silence is no longer empty. It's full alive with presence. You realize that the outer world, for all its movement, was only ever an echo of this deeper one. When you look around your room now, it doesn't seem smaller, it seems infinite, because your attention has changed, and attention is the doorway to the soul. Jung once wrote that Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. In the quiet of your own home, you feel what that means, not as philosophy, but as experience. Looking inside is not an intellectual act, it's a surrender, the kind that humbles you, strips you bare, and brings you face to face with a strange, luminous intelligence that animates your life from beneath consciousness. In this light, staying home becomes something else entirely. It's not a retreat from life, it's an act of courage. To sit with your own chaos until it reveals its pattern. To listen to your own silence until it begins to sing. To love your own darkness until it stops frightening you. And maybe as you wander through these inner rooms, you start to see others differently too. You begin to sense that every person is carrying their own invisible house, their own labyrinth of dreams and wounds. You start to forgive more easily, to listen more deeply, to recognize that every act of cruelty is a symptom of someone's disowned shadow. You start to feel the great web connecting all things, and that's when you realize you never had to leave home to find the world. The world was already here inside you, waiting to be seen. The walls dissolve, the boundaries blur. You are not alone. You are not separate. You are, in some mysterious way, both the dreamer and the dream. The silence, once unbearable, becomes sacred. The solitude, once heavy, becomes freedom. And in that stillness you begin to understand the secret hidden in all great psychological journeys. The way out is through. Through the shadow, through the stillness, through the heart of your own being, until what you once called home is no longer a place at all, but a state of awareness. You have not escaped the world. You have entered it fully. There comes a moment when the silence shifts. It's not quieter, it's deeper. The air thickens, the light grows softer, and something in you begins to open that had been shut for years. You realize this stillness, this act of staying home, has drawn you into the hidden architecture of your psyche. The walls around you are no longer plaster and paint. They are the boundaries of consciousness itself. You are inside your own mind, wandering through the rooms of memory and myth. There is one room you've avoided, the one with the locked door. You felt its presence in your chest, the heaviness, the ache, the vague sense that something lives there, waiting to be seen. You stand before it now, trembling a little. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, the necessary descent into what we've denied. The parts of you that were too intense, too tender, too inconvenient to show the world. You place your hand on the doorknob. It's cold. For a moment you hesitate, and then you turn it. The door opens, not to horror, but to truth. There, sitting quietly in the half-light, are the fragments of your unlived life. The musician who stopped playing, the lover who never spoke, the child who was never allowed to cry. Their eyes meet yours, not with accusation, but with recognition. You understand then that the shadow isn't darkness itself, it's the light you refuse to see. When you step closer, the air hums with memory. You see the moments when you chose silence instead of expression, performance instead of presence, the ways you've edited yourself for approval, the ways you've hidden love because it felt too vulnerable. You see it all, and you feel, maybe for the first time, that your wholeness depends not on perfection but on integration. The parts you once called flaws begin to shimmer. You kneel beside your shadow, not to defeat it, but to listen. It speaks in symbols and images, not words. A cracked mirror, a hand reaching through fog, a house submerged in water. These images arise from the depths of the unconscious, the great sea beneath thought. Jung believed this is where the soul communicates not through logic, but through metaphor. You begin to understand what the symbols mean, not intellectually, but viscerally. The mirror is the self you've avoided seeing. The fog is confusion before clarity. The submerged house, that's you, waiting to rise. This is the work of individuation, not becoming someone new, but remembering who you are beneath the personas and projections. It's the quiet miracle of returning to yourself. And as you sit in that room with your shadow, you notice another presence watching from the doorway. Softer, subtler, the opposite, yet the complement. The anima if you are masculine, the animus if you are feminine. Jung described them as the inner contrasexual soul images, the divine twin who lives within you. They appear in dreams and intuitions, guiding you toward balance. You sense them not as a person, but as a feeling and inner knowing, the voice that whispers when reason falters. You realize that love, the kind that transforms, doesn't come from another person first. It begins here, in the marriage between your inner opposites, between logic and feeling, between control and surrender. When these opposites reconcile, the psyche breathes again. The world inside you expands. Dreams begin to speak in full sentences. You wake with symbols etched into your awareness, a river that flows uphill, a bird made of fire, a mirror that reflects the stars instead of your face. Each image a message, each night a descent into the myth of your own becoming. You start to understand why Jung said dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. They show you the film playing beneath your waking life, the unseen script directing your choices, your fears, your longings. Staying home has turned you into your own archaeologist. You brush the dust from forgotten symbols and begin to see how every decision, every heartbreak, every coincidence was part of a larger pattern. You were never lost. You were being shaped. The stillness you once resented has become sacred ground. You sit with your coffee, sunlight pooling across the floor, and realize you are not the same person who first sought distraction in the silence. Something in you has softened. Your eyes see differently now, not just what's visible, but what's invisible beneath it. The way someone's laugh hides sorrow. The way your own heart breaks open and expands. The way beauty and pain coexist, inseparable. You sense, faintly, the self, the archetype Jung described as the organizing principle of the psyche. It's not a thing you can grasp, but a presence that holds you. It feels like standing in the center of your own life, no longer pulled apart by fragments, a still point in the turning chaos, the center of the mandala. And as you sit in that center, something unexpected happens. You begin to feel gratitude, not the polite kind, but the fierce gratitude that arises when you realize your suffering was a teacher. That the loneliness was not punishment, but initiation. That the silence you feared was the doorway through which your soul could finally speak. You understand now that staying home, staying with yourself, was never about withdrawal. It was the path inward, so that one day you could return outward with depth. The world doesn't need another mask. It needs people who have met their own depths and returned whole. People who've looked into their shadow and found light enough to guide others through theirs. In that realization, your chest opens. The breath moves differently, slower, fuller, freer. You are still at home, but now the home feels infinite. You can almost sense the world breathing with you. The trees outside, the wind, the stars, everything is connected by this invisible pulse of awareness that you've rediscovered within yourself. You look around your room once more, the same objects, the same silence. Yet now, everything glows faintly with meaning. The ordinary has become sacred. The home you thought you were trapped in has become your temple. And in that temple, the soul speaks in a voice both familiar and eternal. You are not what happens to you. You are what awakens through it. Time begins to blur. The hours fold into each other like waves folding back into the sea. You are still at home, but the meaning of home has changed entirely. It no longer points to a place with walls and furniture, but to a vast interior landscape, fluid, luminous, alive. The outer world hums softly in the distance, but you are no longer haunted by its noise. You have found the stillness beneath the stillness. The psyche, Jung said, is like nature, it seeks balance, not perfection. And in the balance you found, something beautiful begins to unfold. You start to see your life not as a linear story, but as a mandala, a circular dance of opposites, chaos weaving harmony, endings birthing beginnings. You recognize the rhythm of it in everything, in your breath, in your grief, in the way the moon disappears only to return. This is what Jung called individuation, the lifelong unfolding of the self. It is not a destination, but a relationship between the conscious and the unconscious, the known and the unknown. You begin to live in dialogue with your own depths. Every feeling becomes a messenger, every dream a teacher. You no longer run from discomfort, because you've learned it carries something you need to know. You start to walk differently, not literally, but psychically. There's a quiet confidence, not born from certainty, but from intimacy with mystery. You've met your shadow and realized it bleeds light. You've encountered your inner opposite and felt the birth of wholeness. And now, as you stand in the center of yourself, you sense a new kind of courage emerging, not the kind that conquers, but the kind that listens. The courage to remain present with the truth of what is. Sometimes that truth is tender, sometimes it's brutal, but always it's yours. You begin to realize that staying home, truly staying, was an act of love, not self-indulgence, but self-encounter. You faced what most spend lifetimes avoiding. You stopped chasing the world long enough for the world within you to reveal itself, and what it revealed was not weakness, but wonder. You are both the dreamer and the dreamed, the question and the answer, the wound and the healer. Every day now feels like a conversation between your inner and outer worlds. The sound of rain is no longer just weather, it's the unconscious speaking in rhythm. The scent of morning coffee is an invocation. Even silence carries texture. You start to sense meaning everywhere, not because the world changed, but because you did. You understand now that meaning isn't given, it's made. And in that realization, you rediscover a forgotten kind of freedom. The freedom not to escape life, but to meet it fully even when it breaks you open, especially then, because staying home has taught you the oldest secret in psychology. Transformation is not about becoming something different. It's about becoming who you already are, beneath the noise, beneath the masks, beneath the borrowed expectations. The self was never lost, only hidden under the rubble of habit and fear. When you see this clearly, you begin to move differently through the world. You carry stillness like a lantern. You speak less but mean more. You notice beauty where before there was only routine, the pattern of light on the wall, the way someone's laughter bends time, the small mercy of being alive. You no longer fear solitude. You've made peace with your own company. You've learned to sit with silence until it begins to hum like a familiar song. You realize now that staying home was not an interruption of your life, it was the beginning of your real one. And perhaps you start to wonder, what if the world's chaos was always an invitation? What if every forced pause, every heartbreak, every quiet night was conspiring to bring you here to this intimacy with your own soul? You think of all the times you ran from discomfort, only to find that the running was what hurt the most. You think of how the shadow you feared turned out to be the guardian of your gifts. You think of how, in facing yourself, you discovered everyone else too, because we are all fragments of the same vast psyche, dreaming together. This realization brings a new tenderness. You begin to look at others not as strangers, but as mirrors, each carrying their own shadow, their own buried light. You start to sense the invisible thread connecting all suffering, all hope. Compassion ceases to be an idea. It becomes instinct. You remember Jung's words, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." You feel those words not as philosophy, but as blood in your veins. Enlightenment was never about ascending. It was about descending into the depths, into the soil of being, where life renews itself. And when you finally return to the outer world, to noise, to people, to motion, you carry the stillness with you. You no longer seek meaning outside yourself, because you found the source within. You move through the world as if it were your own reflection. Every encounter becomes sacred. Every act, however small, ripples through the unseen. You have become the home you once sought. The journey ends where it began, in the quiet room, the breath, the heartbeat. Yet now everything has changed. The walls